People think this path is loud. They imagine noise, applause, crowds. They imagine confidence filling every room. But the truth is quieter than that. The loneliest moments don't come when you lose. They come when everyone is watching and no one is really there. I've stood in arenas packed with people and felt more alone than I ever did in an empty gym at dawn. Because noise can hide distance. Silence can't. This path doesn't announce itself as lonely. It looks like purpose. It feels like direction. At first, you tell yourself this is what you chose, that discipline will protect you, that focus will be enough. But slowly, without asking your permission, the distance grows. People stop asking how you're doing and start asking what you're producing, what you're delivering, what you're winning. And you learn something early on. Being needed is not the same as being understood. You keep walking anyway. Not because it feels good, but because turning back would mean facing a different kind of silence. This is the part no one warns you about. The part before the pain has a name. Before disappointment shows its face. Just you, your thoughts, and a path that gets narrower with every step. If you're still here, then you already know what that feels like. Expectation doesn't arrive all at once. It settles in slowly. Like weight added one plate at a time. At first, it feels earned. A sign that you're trusted, that you're capable. Then one day, you realize it never leaves. People stop seeing effort. They only see results. And even those are never enough for long. You wake up already behind. Already carrying something you can't put down. Because if you do, everything you built starts to shift. You tell yourself this is strength, that pressure is a privilege, that carrying more means you matter. But pressure doesn't ask how you're holding up. It only asks if you can hold more. There's no room to hesitate here. No space to be unsure. Because doubt looks like weakness from the outside. So you learn to move forward without answers. To make decisions while tired. To lead while empty. The hardest part isn't the work. It's knowing that if things go wrong, the silence will be yours alone. Success belongs to everyone. Failure has a single address, and you memorize it. You don't talk about this weight. Not because you don't feel it, but because explaining it would sound like complaining. So you keep your head down. You keep going, and you let expectation become your shadow. Always there, always watching, always heavier than it looks. Distance doesn't start with betrayal. It starts with delays, messages that take longer to answer, conversations that feel shorter than they used to, eyes that no longer meet yours the same way. No one announces they're leaving. They just stop standing close. You notice it in the quiet moments. When something goes wrong and the room doesn't fill the way it once did. Support fades softly. So softly you question whether it ever existed at all. People don't turn against you. They turn away. And that hurts more than anger ever could. Because anger means you mattered. Distance feels like erasure. You replay moments in your head, wondering when the shift happened, what you missed, what changed. But there's no single moment to point to, no argument, no explosion, just absence. You learn not to ask why, not because you don't want answers, but because the answers wouldn't change anything. You adjust, you lower expectations, you stop reaching first, and quietly, without saying it out loud, you accept a hard truth. The higher you go, the fewer people stay close long enough to see the cost. Not everyone leaves because you failed. Some leave because staying requires more than admiration. And not everyone is willing to pay that price. Staying is rarely dramatic. There's no music behind it. No one claps when you decide not to quit. Most days, staying just looks like showing up tired, showing up sore, showing up when your body is asking for rest and your mind won't allow it. You learn the difference between pain and damage. Not because someone taught you, but because stopping was never an option. There are moments when leaving would be easier, cleaner, more understandable. Moments when walking away would finally let you breathe. But staying has its own logic. A quiet agreement you made with yourself a long time ago. One you don't remember signing, only honoring. So you play through injuries no one sees. You carry fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. You push through days that blur together. Not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, but because quitting would mean admitting that everything you endured before this was negotiable. And it wasn't. The cost doesn't arrive as one heavy bill. It shows up in small withdrawals. Less patience, less softness, less room for anything that isn't essential. You don't become harder on purpose. You become precise. Because when the margin for error disappears, everything unnecessary gets stripped away, including parts of you. This is what staying really costs. Not your body first, not your reputation, but the version of yourself that once believed this path would feel lighter with time. There's a moment you don't notice at first, a moment when the questions stop, not the big ones, the small ones. How are you holding up? Are you okay? Do you need anything? They fade quietly, replaced by expectations, deadlines, results. People assume you're fine because you've always been, because you haven't fallen yet, because you learned how to stand without leaning, and you don't correct them. Not because you're hiding something, but because explaining would take more energy than you have left to give. So you answer with progress, with performance, with proof that you're still moving, even when you're not sure how much longer you can. The strange thing is, this is when the loneliness sharpens, not during the struggle, but when your struggle becomes invisible, when resilience is no longer admired, only expected. You start to realize that strength, once it's consistent enough, stops being seen as strength at all. It becomes your baseline, and baselines don't get checked on. So you carry it alone, not heroically, not proudly, just quietly. Until one day, you wonder when being dependable started costing you the right to be human. Somewhere along the way, you stop expecting anyone to understand, not out of bitterness, out of accuracy. You learn that most people don't leave because they don't care. They leave because staying requires presence. And presence is expensive. So when someone does stay, really stay, you notice. Not because they say the right things, not because they fix anything, but because they don't rush the silence. They don't ask you to explain yourself. They don't need the story simplified. They don't demand optimism. They just remain. And that kind of presence feels unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable, because you've trained yourself to carry weight alone, to solve before speaking, to endure without witnesses. So when someone sits with you in the quiet, you don't know what to do with it. You realize how rare it is for someone to choose proximity without expecting something in return. No applause, no performance, no version of you that needs to be impressive. Just you as you are in that moment. And in a strange way, that's heavier than being alone. Because being seen means you can't hide behind strength anymore. But it's also lighter. Because for the first time in a long while, you don't have to carry everything by yourself. Hope doesn't arrive the way people talk about it. It doesn't kick the door in. It doesn't change everything overnight. Most of the time, it barely announces itself at all. It shows up as permission to breathe a little slower, to loosen your grip without losing control. You stop hoping for things to get easier. You stop hoping to be understood by everyone. That kind of hope is loud, and it doesn't last. The hope that stays is smaller, more disciplined. It's the hope that comes from knowing you don't have to explain every scar for it to be real. It's realizing that being misunderstood isn't failure. It's a side effect of depth. You begin to accept that some paths aren't meant to be crowded, not because you're better, but because they demand something most people aren't willing to give consistently. And that's okay. Hope becomes less about arrival and more about alignment, about walking forward without needing the road to widen, without needing permission, without needing applause. Just the steady understanding that you're not broken for feeling the weight. You're human for carrying it. There isn't a clean way to finish a path like this. No sentence that wraps it up. No moment where everything finally makes sense. Some things don't resolve. They just quiet down. You don't wake up one day feeling light.